Wait, what? Why can't I feel my legs? Why can't I feel my legs?
Good question, definitely not cursed Legoshi. How about I tell you from the start? So the frame is built from cheap 1/8 inch aluminum strips that I picked up from a local hardware store. These I just bent by hand with a vise. Then the whole thing was pretty much riveted together with steel rivets. The framework for the lower jaw though was made separately and then bolted in so that way it could still pivot on the bolts. That way the jaw could move independently. I also crammed a plastic sheet in the head so all the electronics and mechanical bits had something that I could actually attach the mounts to. Moving forward throughout the build, I had to do a handful of different 3D printed parts. These were pretty much the nose like you're seeing here, the eyes, the jaws, and all of the mounts that the servos held into. But I'll get to more about that a little later. The accessories like the eyes and teeth were kind of made all throughout the build, so I'll just show you guys roughly how I made them here. Animatronics are downright creepy unless they're perfect, so I'm gonna lean into that and put up a body horror counter. Put up the counter! These are the things that keep me up at night, you know, other than the unsettling silhouette staring at me from across the room while I try to sleep. I'm not nuts, I swear. Most of the aesthetic pieces were made on my resin 3D printer, so they'd be a little bit extra smooth, and then I spent even more time sanding and filling gaps to make sure they'd be perfect before hand painting and glossing them. As for the tongue, I bought that from a lad by the name of Abra from Songdog Studios over on Etsy. They make a killer product, and you guys should go check them out if you get the chance. Did I mention they have really neat stickers too? As a quick mechanical rundown, everything runs on Metal Gear servos in this build. They essentially pivot an arm connected to a motor, and I can tell that motor what angle to go to. So, for example, the jaw gets pushed and pulled on a homemade linkage, just connected to that one motor. Same goes for the eyes, except the linkage is steel wire acting as cheap push rods, which essentially do the exact same thing, they're just more flexible in all directions. The eyes can only look left and right since I didn't want to spend a ton of time on them, but they get the job done. They just sit on a bolt and rotate. However, I did want a more expressive face, so I added the moving eyes, moving eyelids, and ears that waggle. All the mounts were made from 3D prints that I designed and hardware that I had lying around. What you just saw were the prototype bits. Sadly, motors don't run on black magic, so I had to program 2 Arduino microcontrollers and build a circuit to make magic happen. Basically, it works by taking an audio signal through a jack, passing it through a frequency modifying circuit, and amplifying that signal so the controller can read it. Then the Arduino converts that to a signal for the jaw. Testing went well overall except for 2 issues. The first was overheating. The second was a close call because I forgot to turn the power on when I was leaning over the Animatronic. Here's a dramatic reenactment of what almost happened. So after I got the Animatronic working, it was time to make it look actually like Legoshi. And to say the least, I had my methods. Okay, so what I really had to do was to start by stuffing the head full of plastic bags. The reason I did this is because it helps to fill out the rest of the shape of the head, and then after that, I used a trick that I once saw Adam Savage use to make a papier-mâché bear head. Basically, you wrap the entire head in a few layers of cling wrap, and that prevents the tape that then gets wrapped around the cling wrap from sticking to anything else. The tape, however, needs a lot more layers than the cling wrap does. And by that, I mean a lot. So why go overkill with the tape? The reason being because more layers equals a thicker shell, which means it would be more rigid. The duct tape essentially is making like a formed leather shell in a way. By the end of wrapping everything, I think I counted about 10 layers of tape, which almost felt like a hefty leather hide. Once the shell was wrapped, I referenced the archives for pictures of the boy. Then I did my best to transfer any hard lines I saw in the manga to the tape shell. I also added some lines like the one from the back of the skull to the base of the neck so I could easily swap out this shell to another skin. Now there were a lot of bad patterns and wasted tape, but we don't talk about those, now do we? Shh. Before I made the final tape shell, I made a mouth lining to see where I had to trim the fur around the jaws. The mouth was lined with one of my new favorite materials, EVA foam, the staple of professional cosplayers. It's easy to work with, stretchable, sandable, and heat moldable, so it worked especially well when it came to lining the mouth. My adhesive of choice here is rubber cement since it also stretches really well and holds to just about anything. Now, the reason I did things like line the mouth to hide the framework was because otherwise you get kind of an unsettling effect from the animatronic. For those of you who don't know, making a good animatronic is the art of mimicking life via robotics. The word animatronic actually comes from the words animation and electronics, where animation refers to the lifelike movement. However, if you do this poorly, you end up with an uncanny valley effect where things look very unnatural and almost real, but not quite, and our brains are wired to tell us that there's something wrong. If things seem a bit jumbled with the shell, it's because they are. It took me about 5 tries and 4 rolls of duct tape to actually get the shape right, so the final skin was made out of the one you're currently seeing, which is black duct tape with some red that I put on because I very quickly realized you can't draw with a black Sharpie on black duct tape. I tried a few non-destructive methods to make the patterns, but the best method I found was using painter's tape and pins to make a cheap duck cloth backing, and then using the duck cloth to cut the fur. Pro tip, use an X-Acto knife to gently cut the back of the faux fur. It'll make way less loose fur that way once you're done. After that, I just used a bit of scrap foam and some more tape to better shape the snoot and reinforce all of the edges on the duct tape. That way, the edges wouldn't split if, for example, something got pulled. But then I just had to glue it all up a little bit at a time. Same went for the detachable jaw fur, which just holds on with Velcro. Once I had the process down, it was rinse and repeat for the gray fur too. Now, when I started to glue everything, it started to rain, and I like a good storm from time to time. It helps me sleep. However, this one was really intense, and it gave me an idea for a joke in the video about the power going out and working by candlelight, and then it actually did. So the next morning, I got back to work starting with the ears. Remember how I said EVA foam is phenomenal for its properties like heat shaping? I did exactly that. I layered 3 pieces to make the ears, made a hole where the servo motor could poke through, and then glued all the pieces together. Once glued, I heat shaped the ears and curved them inwards so they'd be a little bit more realistic looking rather than just flat, static ears. And since I don't really like waste, I kept all my fur scraps and used them to cover the ears. They were honestly the most simple thing in the entire build to make. And if you ask me, I think they turned out really well. The last thing I had to do for the ears was just poke holes for where the servos could go through for maximum wagglage. Then I moved on to the haircut. Since I realized taking a disembodied wolf head to a salon would be pretty weird, I styled the fur myself. I actually had to watch a lot of extra tutorials since I've never cut hair in my life, but I looked at everything from cosplay to fursuit makers, and I gotta say, there's some very talented stylists out there. However, I'm not one of those. So I actually reached out to a friend who went to cosmetology school for some tips. I did my best with what haircutting tools I had and some styling gel. All things considered, not the worst thing I could have done, but definitely not my best work. As things were getting very close to aesthetically finished, I started to realize how unbalanced the head was. The snoot was just so front heavy. The boy has a honkin' schnoz. I realized that I should have made a counterweight earlier and made a base to hold everything down instead. The base wasn't anything special, but it was desperately needed since, like I said, the snoot was just so heavy. Basically, it's made out of layered scrap plywood that I had lying around, and then it's all just kind of screwed together. When I made the base, I was just kind of winging it, so basically how it works is the aluminum frame can just sit down in some grooves in the wood. Boop! The last things I had to do were boop the snoot for luck and put in Legoshi's dentures. Did I mention that the teeth were designed from a 3D scan of an actual young wolf skull? Anyway, I finally got to see 7 months worth of work come together, and it felt kind of like this. Well, it's done. 3 months. 3 whole months. I've mainly rushed it through this last month, but I started, I think, 3 months ago with the frame. But this turned out really well. I'm very happy with all of it. If I had any complaint, it would be that the eyes could be a little bit higher. But for the most part, when the eyelids are actually open, it looks kind of natural. It really depends on what angle you catch it at. Like these angles that were so much better than the majority of my recordings. These were the angles that I based Legoshi's general shape on, actually. I had tons of references that I used, including clips and screenshots of the show, the stop animation puppet, and even some other people's projects, which were kind of similar in nature. Honestly, I think this is one of my favorite projects I've done in a long time because it was so involved. There was everything from 3D printing to learning new techniques like how to make the fur skin and stuff. It was just fun. This is the stuff I like to do. Granted, I think there's some things I could have done better, like, for example, the eyes and the nose bridge was a little bit large. But past that, I was very happy with the turnout. Also, there were a couple of questions that I got asked when I was building this, like, Logan, why did you want to hot swap the pieces? Well, it's convenient for maintenance, but the more important thing is I can reskin this animatronic as any other wolf-style character. So, for example, if I wanted to do Jack or Juno from Beastars, or if I wanted to do Shiro from B&A. The other question I got is, Logan, why didn't you just 3D print this like everything else? Aren't you the 3D printer boy? Aren't you the one who prints? Well, yes, but I built the frame for a reason. I wanted it to be sturdy, and I wanted to have that ability to hot swap things out easily. There's a certain skit you'll see in just a moment here, where the animatronic took quite a bit of abuse. And, granted, it's not one that I took a lot of takes of, but you'll see what I mean. Speaking of which, let's get to the skits.
Hi, my name is Legoshi Beastars. I voice, Jonah Scott. Son of a bitch!
Rabbit.
Kiss me, you wolf! Kiss me, bunny! What the dog doing? Was that the bite of 87? It's Twitch's fault I'm addicted to VTubers. How lucky can one guy be? I kissed her and she kissed me. Like the fella once said, ain't that a kick in the head?
You saved me. Why?
Monkey.
Good night, everybody. Except to everyone that looks like this. You guys get a very special good night. This is gonna sound awkward, but I'm in, let's say male mode.
Need your help. Can you come here?
Well, I can't. I'm buying clothes.
All right. Hurry up, then come over here.
I can't find them.
You mean you can't find them?
I can't find them. There's only soup.
You mean there's only soup?
I mean there's only soup.
Get out of the soup aisle.
All right, you don't have to shout at me. Oh, there's more soup.
What do you mean there's more soup?
There's just more soup, Jack.
Go into the next aisle.
There's still soup.
Where are you right now?
I'm at soup.
What do you mean you're at soup?
I'm at soup.
What store are you in?
I'm at the soup store.
Why are you buying clothes at the soup store?
Hey, take a breath and remember that this won't be forever. Yeah, things will be okay again. I promise.
If you enjoyed the video and want to support me or Jonah Scott, the English voice actor for Legoshi who I collaborated with, then you can find the links in the description down below. He has an amazing Twitch and Twitter community, so go check him out if you haven't. You can find me over on Twitter as well, where I post projects and open up 3D printed commission work from time to time. But thank you all for sticking with it, and I'll see you next time in the Gearworks. Bye!
You saved me. Why?
Monkey.
So tell me your name, where you're from. Oh. Are you a leper? Did you say she was a rabbit? I thought I was weird for talking to a robot.